Hello there, good evening and welcome to this special edition of the Zambia Decides. As you know, we are counting down to the elections on the 13th of August in the year of the Lord 2026. I'm delighted to be sitting down with one of the foremost figures in these upcoming elections. That's the Tonse Presidential Alliance candidate, Honorable Brian Mindubile, who will be my guest for the next hour or so to help us discuss what is on his heart, what should be expected of this campaign, and indeed what is on offer from the manifesto that they are going around the nation to sell you and convince you to cast your vote in their favor. Honorable Brian Mindubile, welcome to Zambia Decides.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Speaker. It's good to be here. I'm happy to come to your program this evening.
Wonderful. First of all, let's deal with the most recent happenings. Your recent trip to Chipata, where we followed developments in the news, your interaction with the grassroots, and much later your interaction with the law enforcement agencies. Conflicting statements. Others say it was a cordial meeting. Others say you were driven out of Chipata, escorted out. What really happened? First-hand account.
Well, first of all, I think it's very unfortunate that we have cadres in the civil service. These cadres are unable to discharge their functions with diligence. Like we said before, PK, as NRPUP, our starting point will not be to only change government, but to change how government works. And we'll start with changing the civil service. We'll change the civil service by professionalizing the civil service, depoliticizing the civil service. And to be able to do that, we'll embark on a merit-based recruitment approach. Once we do that, you will not have a situation like it happened in Chipata yesterday. We went through the barrier program very successfully and retreated to our hotel, Protea Hotel, where obviously, as expected, we had hordes of our supporters, waiting to interact with us before we depart for Lusaka. As we were in a closed-door meeting with the Council of Presidents, we informed that 4 of our members had been arrested from within the hotel premises. For what reason? For merely being found at the hotel and providing security services to us. Apparently, the police command, they came in their hundreds, surrounded the hotel, and they were trying to drive away our supporters. In the process, started arresting our security personnel who were there to protect us and indeed our supporters. It must be noted that that's a private property. And we were there as guests. We were paying for drinks for our supporters. We were paying for food for our supporters. Our supporters actually had their lunch and dinner there. So there was no interference. They were not there to cause any havoc. We made sure that the hotel was properly compensated for the presence of our supporters. So once we confronted the police command, they began to give conflicting statements. It was very clear that the police were acting emotionally. When you have cadres in police service, they begin to respond to the political mood at a given situation. Of course, it's in public domain that the Tonse team was well received at the palace and during the funeral. We received a lot of support from the people that attended the funeral. They walked with us for close to 2 kilometers, offering that support. So what we saw were the police now reacting, to that support that we received, not only at the palace, because the people were actually lined up on the streets right through the CBD. Yeah, so like I said earlier, it all boils down to cadres being employed in the civil service. They abandon their professional duty or professionalism. They begin to act as politicians. No wonder today you'll have civil servants, top civil servants, even at the level of permanent secretaries, issuing political statements. I want to assure the Zambian people that under my government, under the NRPUP government, there will be nothing of that sort. Civil servants, permanent secretaries will stick to their lane, their professional lane of implementing government policy and not participating in politics, as it were.
Were you targeted? Were you driven out of town? Were you asked to leave by the police after they arrested your members?
Yes, they wanted us to leave the hotel. They didn't care how much we had paid, and they simply said they don't want us at the hotel. They wanted all of us to leave the hotel. They came with their Land Cruisers, packed, armed with guns, demanding that we leave the hotel and we leave Eastern Province. That's indeed very, very unfortunate. And I hope that the president will intervene and crack the whip, because certainly we do not expect President Hakainde Hichilema to keep quiet. He can't keep his silence in this particular case. We are key stakeholders. We are opposition leaders. He can't allow his police command to come and drive us out of a private property where we had paid to stay. And they remained silent about what happened.
President Mindubile, in other jurisdictions, given that potentially you are, one of those that are likely to become head of state after the election, you probably are supposed to be provided with state security. What is your administration, outlook on this matter, that perhaps people who come after you shouldn't experience what you're experiencing? Would you like to consider providing security for potential national leaders? You are a national leader as it is already.
Certainly. Remember, PK, if you go through the Tonse Manifesto, we're going to provide a very conducive governance environment, an environment where the ruling party and the opposition will coexist. The opposition political parties, the opposition generally, play a key role, PK, in providing checks and balances. And they should not be regarded as enemies of the state. That's an alternative government. So there must be continuity at any given time. Even when we get into power, we'll remind ourselves of one fact, the fact that one day we will not be in power. Another government will come into power. We would like to create an environment or a platform where we can continue to coexist even when we are out of government. So at public events, for instance, you would want to accommodate opposition. Clearly, most of the drama that happened started right at the funeral, where the protocol team was instructed to ignore the opposition completely. We had over 15 opposition political party leaders who were never given an opportunity to even lay wreaths on the grave of their late chief or king, Mopezeni. Very unfortunate indeed. You know, PK, that most of the leaders that were in my delegation related very well with the late Chief Mpezeni. I personally related very well with the late Chief Mpezeni. I actually was speaking to him on phone 10 days before he died. And those that are in government today, including the protocol team, are privy to the videos and pictures where we took a lot of pictures with Chief Mpezeni. They could therefore not doubt the relationship that I enjoyed, together with other leaders enjoyed with Chief Mpezeni. So for them to completely black us out and not give us an opportunity to even live, it was most unfortunate. We ignored it. We said we'll let it pass. But it's indeed unfortunate. When we come into government, things will change. The opposition and the ruling party will coexist. The fact that we hold different political ideologies should not be a point of departure, should not create enmity between the two. Right. There must be coexistence at all times.
Right. Before we move our discourse to issues of the economics and the welfare of the Zambian people, I'd like for you to perhaps speak to the environment within which you are campaigning. We have seen a resurgence of political violence in Kabwe recently, in Chawama, in Mazabuka, and other places. What's your reaction to this, and what is your desire? What sort of environment do you anticipate on the ground as you begin to traverse the length and breadth of this nation, in terms of this resurgence of, politically driven or instigated violence?
Yes, PK, again, I keep going back to the party manifesto because that's the undertaking that we make to the Zambian people. It's a social contract. We have a zero tolerance for political violence, as Ton said. So that's what we maintain. And I want to tell you that in the recent past, there's been a spate of incidences of violence. You go to Mazapuka, you go to Chavuma, you go to Western Province, you go to Kawe, Chawama. Now, when you look at all these cases, there's a golden thread that runs through. This violence has been caused by UPND cadres. These are UPND cadres who are wielding machetes, pangas as it were. But you would have the president go on stage and ask the people to say, do you want to go back to the pangas? And the people are saying no. Then I wonder, because the pangas are here with us today. There were pangas in Chawama. There were pangas in Kabwe. There were pangas in Mazabuka. Pangas in Chavuma. And pangas in Mongo. These pangas were carried by UPND cadres. So when the president asked the question as to where they want to go back to the panga culture, the issue of pangas under the previous government, the PF, the party that I belonged to, ended in 2021. The late President Edgar Chagwa, apologized to the nation. I myself, together with many other leaders, we made apologies to say, we apologize for the cadreism that happened. But we were also very quick to say, even the time that we saw the violence, political violence, in many cases, it was instigated by the UPND. They had a very powerful propaganda machinery and they turned it against the ruling party then. We knew that before long, the Zambian people would know the truth about their panga culture within the UPND, which started a long time ago under the Mapatizia formula, as it were. So here we are. We are maintaining zero tolerance to violence. So all these cases we are talking about, where people have been hacked with pangas, people are wielding guns in Mazabuka, all these are UPND cadres. So the message I have for my brother, President Hakainde Hichilema, is that he needs to introspect and look at the violence within his own political parties before he points at other political parties, before he talks about pangas in other political parties. Can he control the panga culture in the UPND? Can he control the gun culture in the UPND? So there's only one violent political party today, and that is the UPND. It's a known fact. Everybody knows this. Otherwise, how do you explain what happened to Gary Nkombo? Now, what is most unfortunate, PK, is that the UPND have instructed the police command, wherever there's violence, they'll go and arrest the victim. They're arresting victims everywhere. In Chawama, we have videos. We have videos of UPND cadres breaking, damaging property belonging to Brighton Undwe. The videos are all there. The question to ask is, has any of those perpetrators of violence been arrested? Nothing. Nixon Chilangwa is in jail. He's been in jail, charged with malicious damage to property, over a damage of one vehicle, Mahindra. There were over 5 vehicles that were broken last week in Chawama. Has anybody been arrested? Are any of those UPND cadres going to jail? And the UPND really think the Zambians cannot see this.
The police have issued a statement claiming that the people they arrested in Chipata, some of whom were in your entourage, are linked to the Chawama, fracas. What's your comment on that?
Look, it's very, very sad. It's very shameful, to say the least. Ricky, a guy called Peter, these were driving. They were actually behind the wheel in the procession. At no time did they disembark from their vehicles to cause that violence. They drove right through the violent crowd. And for one to come up today and want to charge those people with the malicious damage to property is most unfortunate. They're looking for excuses. Go and watch the videos. They were actually driving. Those guys were behind wheels. They were driving our party members, and our party members did not disembark from the vehicles. The people that were on foot were our supporters from Chawama. So to go and pick up those colleagues, that's part of the security detail. They were on vehicles. They were driving right through. So like I said, the aim really is to try and throw blame to others, as it were. Yeah, so they will continue to do this. But I have this message for the Zambian people. Do you want to continue with a government that will treat innocent citizens the way we were treated in Chipata, where private investments like a hotel are raided, clients are driven away with guns? What confidence does that leave to the investor? Can we confidently go out there and promote Zambia as a favorable investment destination with what is happening, how the police are behaving? Would you continue to vote for a government that would go after a person like Gary Nkombo, who is harassed, beaten by fellow party members, and he's later charged with assault? Do you want to vote for the people of Chawama? Will you give a vote to the Upnd, who have instructed the police to pick up people who were victims in the disruption and the violence that happened the day we're celebrating the ECL's memorial? It's a question the Zambian people must ask themselves. President Hakainde Hichilema is coming to you to ask a question whether you'd want to go back to the panga culture. Ask him one question when you meet him. What happens to the panga culture that has existed in the UPND from the Mapatizia formula? They've continued to wear pangas. Kungo was killed in Solwezi on voting day. Up to today, the UPND are carrying pangas. They've even gone further. They're brandishing guns in most of these cases. So why isn't the president condemning the pangas in his own party? Why is he not condemning the guns in his own party? He would like to paint the former government black using pangas. He's leaving his own government, that is his own party cadres that are using guns and pangas today. So Zambians, you need to stay very alert. Keep watching the activities of UPND and ask yourselves one question. Are you ready to continue with this government?
One more stretch on this, Mr. President, is how you your party providing any legal services to your members that have been arrested? What is the status as we speak, as we record this program?
Yes, we are providing legal services. We left some people behind to see to it that our people are assisted. We were later told that the 4 gentlemen will be transported to Lusaka. Apparently, they were charged with aggravated robbery. Now, PK, this is a common story. If you go through, starting with Mumbipiri's story, there's always a 20,000 kwacha and a laptop, an iPad in the UPND story. Everywhere, no, I lost a 20,000 with a laptop. Even in the Chawama story, when it was the UPND themselves that came to the road and began to throw stones, there is a report that one of them lost a 20,000 kwacha and the famous laptop or iPad. So this story, I think, is the 10th time, and people are now wondering, is it the same laptop or is it the same 20,000? It seems there's some special 20,000 and some special laptop that is always lost whenever the UPND causes violence. And people are wondering who could be the owner of this 20,000 and the owner of that laptop that keeps missing each time they cause violence.
During your recent trip to Chipata, obviously, coincidentally, our crew happened to be in Chipata at the same time. We took time to go to certain public places, including markets and bus stops. And we merely wanted to speak to them on what's happening, what are their thoughts. And they were refusing to speak. They said, we cannot speak because someone might be listening, someone might see us. I got a little bit concerned. How did we arrive here, President Mindubile, that a Zambian should be scared to speak to a media crew on matters that affect their livelihood?
Yes, those are lived realities, PK. Zambians today cannot express themselves. Zambians cannot speak because of the oppressive laws, because of the cyber laws, because of the draconian laws on seditious practices, on hate speech, and the whole range of these oppressive laws that the Upnd is using today. You remember that the last time we heard of some of those laws being applied was the pre-1991, when we're one-party state. And unfortunately, that's what President Upnd has done. Now, if you ask me, President Upnd had promised, to provide a freedom, to grant freedoms to citizens to speak. What has happened is the exact opposite. So in our manifesto, we've actually undertaken that we'll review most of these laws. We want Zambians to enjoy their freedoms as they are provided for under the Bill of Rights. So most of these laws, starting with the cyber laws, will ensure, for instance, that the usage of the cyberspace is safe. People are not harassed by, bullies on these platforms. But at the same time, the Zambians must be free to express themselves. Yes.
Right.
So it's something that we're taking very seriously. We know that even in the villages, when you're talking to people, they'll say, Nilibe lawyer, sninga kambe, kunabwela cyber. You can't oppress Zambians that way, PK. Yeah, so as the incoming government, we have looked at that, and we are definitely going to address that in the first few months of us coming into government. We will look at the comprehensive review of the Constitution. We are also going to look at these laws, especially the ones that were passed towards the end, because we know that they were not adequately interrogated by the committees, and the citizens did not have chance to contribute to the enactment of these laws. So Zambians, be rest assured that when the NRPUP government comes into power, we will review all the oppressive laws. We want to give you back your freedom of expression. We want to give you back your freedom of speech. We want to give you back the freedom of movement and to be able to associate freely, because that is what our number one law, our Grundnorm, being the Constitution, provides for you as a Zambian people. So this is an undertaking that we make as the Tonsi Alliance.
Let's go back to the issue of your manifesto, which you keep, citing. One of your thematic messages every time I listen to you is youth unemployment. It sounds as if it's a priority. It's a do or die. Why is this youth unemployment so central to your campaign theme?
Well, first of all, when you look at our manifesto, we have looked at moving the women and the youths from the margins and placing them at the center of policy and economic transformation, making the youth the main drivers of this economic transformation. So when you look at the youth, you are looking at somebody who with energy, coming in with capacity in terms of education and indeed ingenuity. So as we look at the plight of the women, we are prioritizing the youth and ensuring that, one, we take a two-pronged approach. Number one is to build a youth-owned enterprise. And number two will be to make our youth employable by providing structured skills, a apprenticeship, and indeed a experience that, again, workplace experience pathways. So two things. You are building entrepreneurs. At the same time, you are training youths so that they're employable. Now, to be able to do that, we are creating a desk at State House, a youth enterprise and employment desk. So this will coordinate youth activities right across the sectors, as it were. That way, we'll have an accelerated implementation of the policies that we have, for the youth, as it were. So to answer your question, PK, youth unemployment is very high. It's such a time bomb. we are treating it as an emergency. We've got to create employment for these youths. We've got to absorb most of these youths in industry to be able, one, to develop, and at the same time, to have a peaceful environment under which this country should grow.
Maybe that's where you call it a time bomb. Is that where cadreism is coming from? Violent cadreism, because they don't have employment.
Well, yes and no. If you look at cadreism, most of these cadres belong to organizations like political parties. The message must come from the top. We have cadres. We have cadres under Tonse. Remember, Tonse has 17 political parties and another 17 civil society organizations. There are a lot of youths under Tonse. We have made it very clear that we will not tolerate violence. So we have zero tolerance for cadreism and violence as it were. There's no violence, not because there are no youths. So on the other hand, President Hakainde Hichilema and the Upnd can only see cadreism in other political parties. The pangas that are wielded in Mazabuka, the guns that are pointed at their own members like Gary Nkombo in Mazabuka are not seen by the president and other political party leaders. The pangas in Kabwe against our former mayor, Patrick Chishala, and his people are not seen. The pangas that we saw those pangas in Chawama. The police command under the Inspector General of Police and his assistant, they cannot see that violence. They can only see violence in political opponents. That is why they could find Chilangwa Kaupebo to have burnt a vehicle in Kawamba, even when he was not on site. Okay? They're able to see things like that. But what we are all seeing, and is on video, somebody is breaking on those vehicles, and they're all captured on video. The IG cannot see that. Comrade Hamamba cannot see that. But Comrade Hamamba has got enough fuel to drive to Chipata to go and arrest our party members and accuse them of having caused the violence in Chawama.
Right. Let's talk about industrialization. I think another thematic area of interest in your manifesto and articulation of what you would like to do for the Zambian people. Within the context of what you are offering and the proposition that is on the table for the elections, where do you see the structured approach to this industrialization, and why is it so important?
Well, maybe we start with Eastern Province. Let's isolate Eastern Province. We're just coming back from there. PK, you know that Eastern Province has a lot of potential for agriculture. Eastern Province farmers grow cotton. They've been growing cotton for a very long time. They've been growing soybeans for a very long time. They've been growing tobacco for a very long time. And of course, they've been growing maize. So where we are coming in to make a difference, as Ton said, is being able to understand the challenges the farmer faces and coming in to stand in the gap. Number one, we want to create value chains within the agricultural sector because our theme is job creation through industrialization. So if we go to the agriculture sector to understand the specific challenges the farmers are facing, the cotton farmers, the tobacco farmers, the soybeans farmers, including the maize farmers, number one, are facing challenges to do with low prices. They're unable to break even each time they embark on these activities. So the question always goes, what is the role of government? Because remember, government has a responsibility to look after its citizens. So for those that have stepped out and they're involved in agriculture, government would simply not say, let's leave them. So we're embarking on the policy of aggregation of various commodities, as it were. And that is how government is going to step in. We have several options, starting with the IDC. We have a Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, for instance. So in sectors where the private sector is not very active, government to step up. I'll give an example. If we look at cotton farmers in Eastern Province, number one, they will need support right from the beginning because most of them are actually out of business. Supported with cotton seed, supported chemicals and everything else. Then government sets up what do you call these gineries You can have baby generaries. You don't have those. You don't need massive generaries. So we could, for instance, have a cooperative of 10 to 15 farmers, and government facilitates and empowers them with a generator, such that, one, we are going to create employment at that generator. That generator becomes like an aggregator, a primary aggregator. The cotton they're harvesting is taken to that generator. They've added value. The lint that is coming from there is not the same as would have been sold had it not been passed through the generator. And then we go to the secondary level. We are looking at industries like Kawe Textiles, for instance. Is Kafue Textiles able to be revamped, or many other such industries, so that the downstream industries is what government is going to focus on using IDC, Industrial Development Corporation. So we will plan to the end. If we plan to create employment in the agricultural sector, and we are looking at cotton farmers, we must be able to plan to the end. Where will that lint end up? Okay? Because here is how the farmer of cotton loses out. He sells raw cotton. It goes to the ginnery. The person that processes it isolates seed, which they will later crush and extract oil and be able to sell the waste as feed. Now, why can't that be a Zambian farmer? Why shouldn't that be the Zambian farmer? So under the NRPUP, we are saying we'll create value chains as part of industrialization. So right away, we look at empowering these farmers with baby generaries in cooperatives. This is a common facility. Okay, we'll recover the capital investments along the way, but you maximize your return from your agriculture. They're not only selling raw cotton, but they're going all the way. They're going all the way to process it before they can sell it to the market and be able to also sell the byproducts as it were.
Right. With your what should I call it? Overarching message of Nakulumutinta Pamakasa, which basically touches on the plight of the impoverished woman, impoverished youth. I listen to you and I am perhaps a civil servant. And I'm thinking, you are talking more to Nakulumutinta Pamakasa. What about me as a civil servant? A man in uniform, police officer, a soldier, and I'm wallowing in Kaloba from 1 month end to the other. For me to survive, I gotta borrow and gotta borrow and I gotta borrow. What plans do you have for them and what comfort can you give them in a similar manner that you're giving to Nakulumutinta Pamakasa? What are your plans for the civil servants and men and women in uniform?
Yes, in fact, our focus on the civil service, like I said earlier, we do not only want to change government, we want to change how government works. So primarily PK, that should give confidence to the civil servants. Because one, most of the civil servants are actually professionals. They've been training over a period of time. They've got work experience ranging from 15, 20 years plus. So we create an environment, first of all, where they'll be able to work and implement government policy. So the manifesto, for the Tonse manifesto, will later translate into government policy. But we have to have a motivated civil service to implement that manifesto. Otherwise, it may fail. Like they say, PK, you don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg. The civil servant stands in that place where they're the ones to deliver this development. So the challenges civil servants face today, for instance, is high indebtedness. They face challenges of career stagnation. They face challenges of accommodation, as it were. So number one, we are going to look at the upward mobility in terms of career progression. A number of them have been training for a couple of years now. They hold degrees, master's degrees, and PhDs. And yet, they are still being paid at the entry level. The upgrading of these civil servants to the appropriate scales is something we're going to do the moment we get into government, because they deserve to be paid or compensated at the level at which they're serving government. Government is receiving a service from the civil servants at that level, and yet they're paying them at the entry level. So that is number one. In fact, just on that one as an example, we were looking at the teachers. Teachers alone, there are over 50,000 teachers that need to be upgraded. They haven't been upgraded in a very long time. And we're saying all those that are due for upgrades will indeed be upgraded. Right. We are looking at the men and women in uniform. They have what they call a notch adjustment system, okay, where depending on the number of years served in a particular rank, they'll get their notches are upgraded, and that also upgrades the pecs that they walk away with. We know for sure that in most cases that has not been implemented. Maybe there's just one wing in the service that is receiving that upward mobility in terms of the notching system. Others have stagnated. We are going to ensure that we implement that notching system so that our men and women in uniform are adequately rewarded for the services they continue to give to the country of protecting the citizens. You look at the issue of debt. The issue of debt swap is something we're going to prioritize because you have a situation where government owes civil servants and the civil servants have borrowed to be able to cover up and lead a normal life. So like any responsible government, we will ensure that we implement the debt swap so that civil servants can get some relief. Then we'll go further. We'll look at the pension scheme. We would like to provide some flexibility, be able to give the civil servants some flexibility to choose between a lump sum or indeed the installments that they receive, so that individual civil servants should be able to choose the option that best works for them. Because we've received some mixed sentiments, when it comes to that. There are other proposals, PK, for instance. Let's look at NAPSA. The people that are subscribed to NAPSA, if NAPSA was a corporation, limited company, you are looking at them as shareholders. And there are proposals today to say, if NAPSA is able to invest in shopping malls, they're investing in the dual carriageway, and they're getting a fair share of return on this particular investment. But this investment actually belongs to the pensioners. It belongs to the people that are subscribing. Why can't we reform NAPSA such that whenever this particular pension scheme invests in some of these investments, they also get a return on that particular investment? So these are some of the options that we are looking at to make it worthwhile for the civil servant. It's unfortunate that when you look at a civil servant, PK, people who have served this country with diligence, after 30, 40 years, they've got nothing to show for. They are back on the street, they are pedestrians, they are homeless, and so on. So when we are planning for pension, or coming up with these pension schemes, we should reform them to ensure that it actually works for this Zambian who dedicated their patriotism, dedicated service to the country. They must be able to retire honorably, get some decent retirement package that can allow them to live comfortably until they answer the Lord's call. So those are some of the early decisions and policies that we're going to implement to just give some relief, to this civil servant.
Right. Now, in the spirit of diversification, Zambia for a long time has been predominantly dependent on mining as the economic mainstay. You and I, we have traveled this country, extensively, and nearly every corner is a tourism hotspot. How are you trying to monetize tourism as an alternative revenue earner for your administration and for the nation within what is contained in your manifesto? Is tourism a priority for your government?
Yes, indeed it is. We actually did a study on tourism right across the world and discovered that there are four main things that tourists look out for. If I can remember, number one, you you look at water features like waterfalls. Number 2, you look at wildlife. Number 3, you look at the pyramids of Egypt among those. I cannot immediately remember the 4th one. So out of the 4, we have 2, okay? And we can clearly industrialize around these 2 major features.
Which is wildlife?
Wildlife and water features like waterfalls.
Waterfalls.
Which we have dotted right across.
And one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Yes, the Victoria Falls. During our study, we actually discovered that the tourism sector alone in Zambia, it could earn us up to $11 billion a year if properly harnessed. Okay, so it's a sector that we are looking at as an economic sector and focusing on what we need to be able to attract the tourists to come to this particular country. So number 1 is infrastructure development. We need backbone infrastructure to most of these tourist sites. We have a number of tourism assets in all the provinces in Zambia. I mean, you go to Northwestern Province, PK, you look at the source of the Zambezi alone. Zambezi River is a long and major river in Africa. Tourists would like to go and see the source of the Zambezi. Now, what have we done? Is there accommodation there? Are there facilities there to facilitate for tourists just to go and witness that? We do not have that. You come down to Northern Province, for instance, where we have the Kasaba Bay. There's no infrastructure. We need airport infrastructure. We need road infrastructure. We need communication infrastructure. You go to Mbala. This is the place where World War I ended. And there are all these features related to the end of World War I. Do we have infrastructure? No. You go to Southern Province. You've got areas where, like Ngombeilede, for instance, besides the Victoria Falls, as it were, you've got areas like Siavonga. So as government, we are going to implement what we are calling a spatial governance system in development. We introduce what we are calling the regional development authorities. So these regional development authorities look at comparative advantages of areas and prioritizing those particular areas for either agriculture, tourism, or any other economic development, as it were. So in terms of tourism, we've got a northern circuit. We are going to look at northwestern. We're going to look at western, maybe cluster northwestern, western, and southern together under one regional development authority, where we should be able to string development to ensure that we increase the number of or tourist retention in the country, as it were, because they can leave Livingstone to go to Sioma, they can go to Kalabo, they can go to Mongu, later they go to Solwezi, they go to Munyilunga. And if they decide to come to the northern circuit, they will land in Imansa and look at the many waterfalls that we have in Luapula province before they come into the northern province, going through Muchinga and the eastern province. So we are looking at it as a major, major economic sector. So besides infrastructure, we are looking at training. So the universities like the Ntumpa University that was started some time back will be one of the projects that will complete under the new government. So that university will basically focus on 2 faculties. Number 1 is agriculture because of the potential of agriculture in the area. Number 2 is tourism. We need to have trained staff. Even for investors, they come and survey. They want to look at is there manpower for that particular investment. So besides putting up hotels and putting up roads, we must have trained staff to work in these facilities and be able to serve at an international standard. Yes.
We obviously can't end without talking about your structured approach to revamping mining and how mining can benefit, a common man on the street. Obviously, we know majority of the youths do not have the luxury anymore of perhaps accessing whether it's a dump site or it's they call them slag dumps and whatnot to extract the residual value and put it back in commercial basket, so to speak. What sort of plans do you have to rejazz, revamp? There's a lot of also prospects of gold discoveries nearly in every area. In certain places, soldiers have moved in and government is trying to restructure. Are you going to follow that trajectory, or what is your point of view on restructuring the mining to benefit every Zambian?
Yes, Speaker, I think to start with, my government will not allow a situation where investors are competing with our youths on dump sites. That's a no-no. Okay? Remember, these are dump sites. This was wasted material from mainstream mining. So an investor coming to participate in mining should come and start greenfield projects. Those dump sites will be left for the youths. They will be left for the Jerabos. Filia Ifilongoma, Filia Black Mountain, Fiama Youths Vesu. Those are for the youths. So that's number one. There will be no competition, there will be no compromise. Those things will be given back to the youths. But in giving them back to the youths, we have to do something more. We have to ensure that the youths are mining safely. We have to ensure that there will be environmental protection. But we also offer clinics to these youths to be able to manage their finances. So those dump sites, of course, will not last forever. So most of our youth will be attached and allocated sites to those dump sites. They will be trained in those three areas that I've spoken about, and they're protected by a Department of Mines, which will have an office in every district to supervise the works of these cooperatives. We are doing this firstly for the youths, and we're also doing it for the country. In our manifesto, PK, you will realize that we're going to formalize these small-scale mines. And that's one way. The transition will be when they are done with those dump sites. It's expected that they would have acquired some capacity of some sort, where together we can move them to other sites where there's been discoveries of gold. Okay, give them licenses, offer them further training, protect them to ensure that they're mining safely, but they're also paying taxes to government for the activities that they're doing. We would have transitioned into a formal sector. Remember, those youths are Zambians. They actually have families that they look after. Most of them actually employ people. All they need is protection of government, so that one, there's dignity in their activity. We also protect them, as it were. So that is one. Number two will be, like you said earlier, the areas where they've discovered gold, like Kikonge. There will be no guns pointed at youths at Kikonge. There will be no guns pointed at youths in Kanyelele, in Mpika. There will be no guns pointed at youths in Petauke where they've discovered gold. What we will instead do is, like I said, the role of government will be to move into that area, do the surveys, map out and establish the resource, the quantum of the resource that exists. If we establish there's 500,000 metric tons of mineral A, okay, map the area where the actual resource exists, because some of the accidents occur where youths have been digging, for a very long distance because they don't have studies. There is no research as to where this particular resource exists. So when they've dug their long trenches, in the end, sometimes weaknesses in the integrity of the ground result in the collapse of that ground, killing them. But if government is able to pinpoint the resource is here, not there, so this is your area, this is your tenement, and so on, and be able to assist them. Now, I want you to understand this. We are not doing them a favor, okay? We are empowering them so that they can also employ other youth to reduce on youth unemployment. So they're actually also helping government. So government will go all the way, employing what we call both backward and forward integration. Backward integration, ensuring they've got licenses, they're protected in their activities. The forward integration is, like I said earlier, we introduce aggregators. These are either coming through government parastatals like IDC or indeed the private sector. They should be able to process and smelt these minerals and give a fair price to our youths. so that there's no stagnation in their progress. They should be able to, there should be some visible progress in their lives, as it were. Yeah. So this is all planned out. This particular formula is working in all the sectors.
Right.
Where the private sector is not attracted, government moves in using parastatals. So the assurance to the private sector, in areas where you're participating fully, government will stay away. But we will quickly move in areas that may not be immediately attractive to the private investor, and yet there's potential for that particular sector to grow. So that way, the farmers in tobacco, the farmers in cotton, the farmers in soybeans, the farmers in sunflower, the farmers in maize are assisted through government intervention. So whichever area, for instance, where the private sector can come and do and build some milling capabilities in areas like Chipata, Vubwi, and those border areas, the government will lay off, because the private sector can play and give a fair value and a primary market to the farmers. In the gold area, if Zambia Gold is able to move in and set up smelters, set up refineries around these gold areas, that way government would have assisted the youths, one with licenses, two with basic equipment for safe mining, and taught them on environmental protection. But at the same time, be able to accept their raw material and process it, and be able to share after the material has been processed,
right,
so that they get a fair return.
Lastly,
so on the large scale mining, of course, we like to assure the investors that we promote investment. The only thing with the Tonzi, it should be on a win-win basis. Right. Let the investor get a fair share on his return, but let the Zambians, the owners of this sovereign wealth, also get a fair share from this particular mining. So we'll review the policies in the mining sector to ensure that they work for both the investor and indeed the Zambian people.
Lastly, as we go, you are a key stakeholder in this upcoming election, and we look at the electoral process act and all the attendant things that are emerging. One of the things that have emerged is the ECZ came to candidates, independent mostly, mayors, councillors, MPs, and say, choose from these symbols one that you like. And mostly people chose the candle, which really relates closely with your lantern symbol. What has happened is the ECZ has issued the directive to tell everyone to vacate the choice of a candle after the fact, that most of the people that already chose a candle have invested their money and all of that. And as we end this, as a key stakeholder, and perhaps some of the people are affected by that decision by ECZ, what are your thoughts and what would be your word of advice to the ECZ on the banning of the use of a candle as a symbol, which they themselves made available?
Yes, firstly, they are relating the candle to be close to our symbol. We haven't complained. We have not complained. Want to put to ECZ, we have no problem with people that are using candles, because we are using a lamp. They both provide light, but they are totally different symbols, as it were. So my advice to ECZ is that you cannot come at this late hour. People have printed T-shirts, they've printed campaign material, they have spent money. They are now being identified with that particular symbol. So to ECZ, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. My advice to ECZ is that abandon that particular decision. You should rescind that decision. That decision is inimical to the interest of the participants in this particular election. So how would these people be compensated? How would you compensate these many independent candidates that chose a symbol that you yourself provided? The time ECZ was providing a candle as one of the options, they were in receipt of our symbol, which is the lamp. They were aware that NRPUP had an approved symbol, which was a lamp. So my advice to ECZ is that, one, please don't participate in politics. The decisions of that nature would only come when The managers of elections are active participants in politics. They begin to catch feelings. They begin to make emotional decisions. It's an emotional decision. It will not help. It will not help. I would not advise them to continue that decision because people have invested. In any case, the people who are supposed to be affected by that symbol are ourselves at NRPUP. We have not complained. Who has complained? Have they moved that particular motion themselves? So I want to say to ECZ, that is the wrong direction. You do well to rescind and end just there, because the people that have used these candles will need compensation. Are you going to manage to compensate these people that have printed materials, have sent out adverts on TV, on radio, and everywhere else? So that's really defranchising. That's disadvantaging a candidate. The ECZ cannot come up now and say that. Yeah.
That's right. So that's for tonight. You've been watching a special edition of Zambia Decides, and I've been hosting, President Brian Mindubile, the presidential candidate for the Tonse Alliance, participating in the 2026 13 August election. We can all wish you all the best.
Thank you, Pige. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We look forward to more engagements on your platform.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Until next time, the Lord keep you and bless you. Bye-bye.